What's up, Internet? It's Brandon here with the very first Free-to-Play Weekly Recap. Today we'll be looking at free-to-play games that were released in the week of 12/16 to 12/22 and kind of giving a brief overview of each. I've played all of them for, a portion of time, minus the VR ones that I don't have the right, equipment for. And so, yeah, I'll talk through those. I'll show some gameplay, talk about everything that's being released so you can see if there's anything that came out this week that you're interested in. And I'll have links to each game in the description box, and I'll try to include timestamps as well. So, that having been said, let's get into it. The first game we'll take a look at is Balantica. Balantica is a Slay the Spire style game where the primary mechanic is balancing hope between two characters as evenly as possible. I did a longer review on Balantica earlier this week that you can check out, but it was a game I enjoyed, and if you check out the review, you can kind of see a little more about the gameplay and how everything functions. Dr. Cog is another deck builder, Slay the Spire style game where the primary mechanic is adding gears to a machine that generates memory for people. Dr. Cog also has a more in-depth review available on my channel that I recorded earlier this week. It was a game that I enjoyed a lot. I think both those games are just the style of game that I enjoy. But if you like either of those or want to check those out, I'll have their links next to them in the description below, along with their timestamps to these little snippets about them. Millivolt is a puzzle solver game where you play a robot who is repairing a microwave. And so you're walking around inside the microwave trying to repair different parts of the microwave, and you collect screws that you can then take and plug into different parts of the microwave that will then unlock doors to a separate area of the microwave where you can continue your path. This game does require a controller. You can't play it with mouse and keyboard, so if this is something that looks interesting to you based on the art style, I recommend that you get a controller to play with. And yeah, it's a pretty good game. I uninstalled it. I'm not going to probably finish it, but it was pretty easy to play. It was not as glitchy as some of the reviews on Steam claimed it was, at least for me. And so, if this looks like a type of game you'd enjoy, I recommend trying it out. The next game I took a look at that was released this week was Unlock Me. It's a game where you're picking like a lock or like a safe style lock, and I'm gonna be honest, I played it for probably 10 minutes, and the only thing that I kind of figured out was if you held the mouse button down, you like kind of took a deep breath so you could hear better when moving around the circle, but I still couldn't figure out how to know whether or not you're triggering the unlock functionality of the lock. I think I heard it click once or twice to like maybe come close to, getting it unlocked, but like I said, after 10 minutes, I was just doing the same thing on repeat and not really seeing any success. If you do hold your breath too long, you pass out and like lose and have to start over. So if you're holding the mouse button down to try to unlock it, just remember to let go once it starts going red and flashing so that you can prevent yourself from passing out if this is a game you're going to try. So I don't know that I would recommend it, but if you want a challenge, Next up, we have Tummy Bonbons, the Sweet Monster. This game was pretty chaotic. The first couple of rounds I played, I didn't really know how to defeat or get candy from all the kids. I died kind of randomly, it felt like. I think, the way to play it is you try to hit lower level kids at the beginning so you can eat candy, and then once you eat candy you get stronger and you get these extra tummies that attach behind you. And as you can see here, it gets a little chaotic as you get more and more tummies, and you're just able to mow through large groups of children to collect all of their candy. It's kind of a mindless fun style game where you can just move around the map without having to really. It's not as tactical, right? Like, yeah, you don't want to hit things that are higher level than you, but for the most part, it's just flying around like a crazy person trying to get as much candy as you can. So a little mindless fun. I didn't keep it installed, but it was enjoyable. the one round where I was doing really well. Next game we'll take a look at is Undercover. This game is a Among Us style game. There wasn't a lobby finder, so I wasn't able to play the game because I didn't have people to play with. It looks like the game has in-game credits that you can earn and then use to unlock cosmetics for your character. But like I said, this game I just wasn't able to play, so you have to try it out if it's something that you want to do. Awaria is another game released this week. In Awaria, you are repairing factory machines by collecting pieces and putting them back into the machines that are broken, but the factory is haunted, and so you have to dodge the ghost attacks while trying to repair the equipment, and then at the end you kiss? I don't know. That's how the game works, so kissing ghosts and repairing machines is what you're into, then Awaria is for you. A Dual Ascent is a game where you control two characters simultaneously using a controller, and you can use both joysticks, one for each character, and then they both use their corresponding trigger. So the person who you're moving with your left stick uses the left trigger, and the person you're moving with your right stick uses the right trigger. There were some cool puzzle mechanics to working your way up this, mountain is the premise. So there's two characters that are trying to find their way up the mountain, and there's times where you need to alter the conditions so that they can pass through different doors or so they can cross different bridges. This is a game that I kept installed and I will probably come back to finish at some point in the future. So I recommend trying it out if it looks interesting to you. Saloon King is a Old West shooter where you walk into town, with intention to do harm and cause trouble. And you walk into the saloon and pick a fight, and then you meet them out, in different parts of the town and have a good old-fashioned duel. There's no crosshair, which I found to be very challenging. I died many times while trying to play this game. I did eventually beat it by defeating all of the different people, but it was difficult because I think the main key if you do decide to play this game is just keep on the move. If you hold still too long, you're gonna get shot. So keep moving. Don't worry about missing. You can't run out of ammo. So just sprint and shoot and hope for the best is how I achieve success. Big Blind is a game that reminds me of one of my favorite games of all time, Hotline Miami. It's a top-down shooter where you are avenging your business that was destroyed by these hooligans, and you're just walking in, guns ablazing, but you're blind, so you can't see where people are, and so you rely on hearing their footsteps and hearing them cock their guns to be ready to shoot or reload, and so you use all of that to know where to aim, know where to shoot, and it's a lot of fun. I enjoyed this game a lot. I kept it installed, and I will definitely go back to it at some point in the future. Inking is a game where you play a ink blotter who has a number of abilities at your disposal, and you pick two at the start of the game, and you then take those into a playthrough of the game where you go from level to level, using those skills, enhancing those skills, and battling different tools and bosses and things. It was pretty good gameplay. I enjoyed, the different upgrades they presented. I think that it has a decent amount of replayability with using other moves. And so if this is the type of game you enjoy, I recommend checking it out. And Scroll is a game that kind of reminds me of the old mobile game Alchemy. You start with 4 elements and you incorporate combinations of them into a scroll to create a spell. And then you're selling these spell scrolls to earn money to pay off your student loans is the premise of the game. And there's some cool interactions with your customers where you'll get a message saying, hey, I need this and here's why, and then you'll send them the scroll they need and they'll follow up and go, hey, it worked beautifully, thanks for that. I was able to cross the chasm and get what I needed, or escape my house and adventure into the world. And so I believe, I haven't played that far, but I believe that those types of character interactions from these people who are buying your scrolls continue through the game, and so you have these story arcs that play out while you're creating these scrolls for people. Um, yeah, I liked the discovery aspect of doing each scroll. This is a game where, had I played it earlier in the week, I might have done a deeper dive review with longer gameplay and showing more footage, because I did enjoy the game a lot. I just didn't have time this week to do any more than 2 kind of deep dive reviews. But yes, it's a very good game. I recommend trying it out. Exsanguination is a first-person melee fighting game where you play a vampire hunter who has been bitten by a vampire, and you have to hunt down the vampire who bit you in order to prevent yourself from turning into a vampire. The combat, you stab with your stake at the vampires that are around you, and then you can also hurl the stake with by pressing F to throw it to hit someone at a distance. And there's also a grappling hook that you acquire in the early part of the game that you can use to jump from place to place. Felt like the gameplay was more focused on determining how to get to the next area and where to grappling hook and the movement aspects, and less of the combat. There were things to fight, but none of them were difficult. And yeah, it was kind of a Quake aesthetic in terms of movement speed and fast reactions to grab onto grappling hooks and stuff. So pretty good, for a free game to just kind of run around on and play with. So if that sounds interesting to you, give it a try. Burn Time Remastered is a remaster of an old game that has been released this week. I hadn't played it before, like the first time it was released in the 90s, so I didn't have a lot of context when playing it. I found the goal of the game to be a little confusing. I wasn't really sure what I was supposed to be doing per se. It's a Fallout Mad Max aesthetic where you're in this post-apocalyptic area. There was a guy, you can recruit people to follow you and like help you out. So I got someone who joined my cause because I promised to pay him in rats. There was also someone who I promised to pay in meats. One thing I did figure out while playing is if you right click, you can change your interact type. So like by default, it's speaking to people, but you can switch it to attack or investigate. And so right clicking gives you a little bit more flexibility within the zones. It was just a game that I had a hard time really knowing what I was supposed to be doing. Pocket Mystery is a Game Boy style game where you play a detective who is investigating a murder that happens in a hotel. It felt more like a visual novel or story that you're playing through. There wasn't anything I did to affect the gameplay in the time that I played. It was just, walk up to people, talk to them, hear their story, walk back to your room, think about what they said. So it felt more like playing through a story and less of a game, which is, something that I'm not drawn to personally, but if that's something that interests you, then I recommend you give it a try. The Crossroads is a game where you play a bartender who is, working at your bar that you've opened, and patrons come in, request drinks, and then you have conversations with them. It's definitely more of a visual novel than game. There is a little bit of gameplay when you're making cocktails, but it's just selecting the ingredients that were stated to you, and then a timing game of clicking that is not difficult, so you should be able to succeed every time. So it's definitely more of a visual novel than a game, which is not really my style, but the art design was good, and so if this is something that you would enjoy, then give it a try. In Stan, you play a recording artist who is trying to come up with their next album, and you, I think, are like a slug or something because you move very slimily and like have to slowly climb stairs. There's a couple other things like about how you move that's kind of weird. And then you can go up the stairs. And there's a piano. You can play the piano. I didn't figure out how to record like music per se. There was a knock at the door. I went downstairs to answer the door, and jump scare warning. This is what happens. Yeah. So don't answer the door if you have a say in it. In Mortimer First Launch, you play a raccoon who is, just trying to find some food, spend his time in the park. And so they recommend you use a controller for this one. I think you can play it without a controller. I don't think it's mandatory, but I did play with a controller. The movement seemed, good, responsive. The only gripe I really had with my playthrough was the tutorial bubble wouldn't go away after I jumped over a log like 12 times. And so, it was taking up most of the screen and wasn't advancing to the next thing I should be doing. And so I kind of got stuck. But the movement was fine. And, if your playthrough, maybe that glitch doesn't happen, you'll be able to experience the game to the fullest. Do the Cat. It's a clicker style game where you unlock new pictures of cats. The main screen for the game just shows a picture of a cat and has some ambiance sounds that you can turn on and off. And then there's a timer for when you'll get a new loot box where you can get a new picture. And if you click, you can speed the timer up. So, there was a frantic amount of clicking for me to try to get, a few loot boxes in, in the amount of time that I was allotting for recording this. And so if you like clicking a crazy amount and looking at cats, Do the Cat is for you. I think the biggest disappointment for me this week was Fisherman. Whenever I see a fishing game, I get excited. I love fishing games. I love fishing in games. I love games with fish. So I was like, yeah, free-to-play fishing game, let's go. Installed it, went into play, and to call this game a clicker game wouldn't really be correct. There's no clicking other than to turn on the automatic fishing and then wait a minute and a half for each fish that it catches. I waited for, I want to say, I let it run for like 15 minutes to see if it would, give me anything that gave me something to do, something to click, something to interact with, and it never happened. It was just me just sitting there watching it fish. I mean, the design was cool, the art was a little rudimentary, but I'm not too worried about that. The biggest issue was there's nothing to do. You can't interact with anything for the duration, and also there's no sound settings, which I need. I need sound settings when I play a video game, and so for those reasons, I just can't recommend Fisherman, despite really wanting to be able to recommend the only fishing game that was in this week. Escape from Castle Claymount is a cute little puzzle game with some claymation aspects to it. You're trapped in a prison in a castle, and you're trying to find clues to escape from the room that you were trapped in. I thought the puzzles were pretty good, not super difficult. It might be a good game to play with the kids or something, let them kind of work through the problems with you. It's a game that I did keep installed. I probably will come back to so that I can complete it, just so I can see, how the ending goes. Doodle Cats is a game with a simple premise. Find all the cats that are in the doodle. There's a free map that is the free-to-play portion, and then there's also a paid holiday map that you can get if you enjoyed doing the free version. This is a great game if you love Steam achievements because you get one per cat that you find, which means you can get 100 achievements. In my first kind of lap of trying to find all the cats, I ended up finding 92, and so I have 92 achievements from this game, and I have 8 left that I'll have to loop back and find at some point. But it's a nice little relaxing search for the cats game. If that's something that you want to do to pass the time, I recommend trying it out. Frightening Monastery is a game that is 100% in Japanese, so I had no idea what I was doing the whole time. It did have very heavy Outlast vibes. You're trapped in a location, you're trying to find your way out, you're avoiding the thing that is chasing you. But again, I didn't know what I was interacting with or what buttons to press to do things. I think F crouched. I hid under a desk for a little while, but then eventually, sister found me. So, it's a neat little Outlast style game, but without being able to read what's going on, it was difficult to play. The Traveler is a game I would describe as Geometry Dash, where you're moving on a side-scrolling screen and jumping over obstacles that you need to avoid. But it has procedurally generated maps instead of preset maps, and there's the ability to acquire upgrades to your characters, so you can move faster, jump higher as you earn coins playing the game. This has got a little more depth than a Geometry Dash does, and it's free. So if that's the kind of game you enjoy, I would definitely recommend trying this game out. Sellsword Saga is a JRPG style game where you are part of the Sellswords, which is a mercenary group that runs missions for people to earn coins. The tutorial mission has you going through a portal into another realm and facing a giant thing that you can't defeat, and then kind of turning your back on the person who wants you to just run into this giant thing and die, and then taking their ship, and now you have your own Sellswords company that you control, and the rest of the game I assume will be building up that company, building up your reputation, and getting new quests and missions. It's a game that I did keep installed. I do think I'll come back to it. I've been looking for a good JRPG for a while now, and I think this one might hit the spot. A Safe Place was another game that felt more like a story than a game. There were some decision elements, like it says, "Hey, you should get dressed before you go downstairs," and I assume that if you don't, the scene that plays out afterwards is a little different. But in terms of like the basic story, it was clicking through, finding out what's going on, and learning about the situation that's occurring. There's something going on in the town, and I assume the rest of the game will be figuring out what that mystery is, and maybe there's later in the game some combat or defense style stuff that you have to do to protect the town from the forces that are invading. And so for the portion I played, it was just a story. It wasn't really for me, but if it looks like it's something you'll enjoy, then try it out. CSC is a game I would describe as a micro platformer. It's a platform game where you have to jump through a level, but it's very, very tiny. The window, as you can see, is just a like 20th or 100th of my monitor. And trying to see the obstacles is really the hardest part of the first couple levels. I did keep it installed. I do want to see how far I can get and try to push myself to complete it. Some of the levels were kind of tough, but I do think that with enough practice, it is a game that can be beaten. I think the menu says it takes 10 minutes, but obviously those 10 minutes are assuming you're executing things flawlessly, which I did not. So it's a game I'm looking forward to continuing, and if it looks like a game you want to try out, it's free. Go try it out. Royal Quest Online is an MMO that has a decent amount of character customization when I was playing through it. There's only 4 classes, so I don't know if in the future, like as you level up, if you can specialize in subclasses or pick specific skills. So from a character perspective, the diversification might not be that high. I like the art style of the game. It does have some non-free-to-play components or things that you can pay for. There's a premium subscription that you can opt into. It has daily rewards, like most free-to-play games, to drive people to log in every day. And then there's also a cash shop where you can buy coins that you can use for various item bundles, and those range from like $1 to $50 to $100, depending on what you want and how much it will advance you in the game. So, while I don't know, I didn't play long enough to know if it's able to be completed without paying for any components, or if you hit kind of a paywall where it's like I'm not able to fight this fight unless I get this sword from the cash shop. But if it looks like a game that you would enjoy, I thought the art style was nice, the combat was pretty simple, and it may be worth trying out. Flappy Octane is what you might expect from the name. It's a Flappy Bird style game, but instead of a bird, you have a car, and you try to navigate the car through a series of hoops and see how far you can make it. So it's a pretty simple, free-to-play game. If those are the style of games that you enjoy, then give it a try and see how far your car can fly. Fallen into the Darkness is a game where it's a first person platformer game where you're trying to navigate your way down what looks like maybe like a sewer pipe safely, because you have to jump from platform to platform, and if you fall too great a distance, then you die because gravity does that sometimes. Um, for a free game, it was pretty good trying to jump from place to place. I left it installed. I might try again to beat it. I definitely had a hard time being successful at jumping from place to place. I never made it down to like the first floor that you can land on, and so it's something that I'll revisit in the future to see if I can achieve more success. Servaball is a game that feels kind of like Super Monkey Ball, where you're rolling around a marble trying to navigate a map, but I was pretty good at Super Monkey Ball, and I was pretty awful at this game. I don't know if it was my sensitivity or something about the gameplay of the strafing from right to left, but I just could not get the ball to go where I wanted, and I didn't even get through the tutorial successfully of collecting all the coins required to advance through the tutorial. And when I tried to play a normal map, I literally could not complete the first map. So it's a game that's challenging. If you like challenging games where you have to be pretty accurate with your movements, then maybe this is a game for you. In Symphone, you play a rabbit who is jumping around, collecting souls of his friends, I believe. It's a platformer. You have double jump. It seems like a exploration platformer where you have to explore the whole map to ensure that you're finding all the souls that are hidden within it. Um, and so yeah, it's a pretty decent platformer, jumping around and finding all the souls. If that's the type of game you enjoy of an exploration platformer, then I would give it a try. Forgotten Fears is a horror anthology game with multiple horror scenes that you can play through. The one that I tried was an underwater scene where you're trying to avoid it, whatever it may be, while collecting objects that are underwater. It was not my favorite. I'm not a big horror game guy, so moving around in the depths while trying to avoid whatever the hell it was. It looked like a anglerfish of sorts. When it finally did catch me, was not really my cup of tea. But if you like survival horror or jump scares, then give this horror anthology a try. Coffee Break is a fun little escape room style game where you play a astronaut who is trying to make coffee, and as you hit different buttons and press different things, you trigger different end conditions for the game. Other than making coffee, in my case, I never was able to successfully make coffee, but I did blow up the Earth and let myself out of an airlock and discover that the Earth is just a Russian nesting doll. So if those kinds of things sound interesting or fun to you, give it a try. I did leave this installed. I'm going to try to find all 12 endings because I did find it to be a fun little silly game to play. Dead Sail is a jump scare game where you are collecting information while you walk around a house about something terrible that had happened there, and while you are doing so, you're being stalked by an invisible ghost. But you have a mirror that you can look through to check behind you to see if the ghost is following you or nearby. Um, when you have information that you've collected, if you see the ghost in the mirror, it burns and disappears, and then you can kind of keep going, but it will try to, hunt you back down. I never died when I played it, but I also didn't play it for very long. This part here where the mannequins that are sitting in the table look different when you look at them through the mirror was enough for me to be like, yep, I'm done. Thanks, game. But if that's the kind of thing you enjoy, then check it out. It's probably got a decent amount of scary stuff or spooky stuff for you. Craft and Conquer is a adventure capitalist style game with a fantasy theme. It's a project being done by a solo developer. The art is a little rudimentary, but I do really like the concept. I thought that the juxtaposition of a clicker while gathering resources and crafting and building up your castle, and then having the RPG elements and Eventually, they plan to add a dungeon area where you can, adventure off with your character to complete quests. I think all of that's really cool. I hope that they continue to develop this game because I do really like it as a concept. I'm going to leave it installed so I can kind of follow its development path moving forward. Infinity R is another idle game with nothing to do. I just sit there and watch a car rolling. Sometimes it's fast, sometimes it's slow. No one knows why. And sometimes you get a loot box that you can use to customize the car that you're just watching roll in perpetuity. So, um, not really a game in my opinion, but if you like watching cars roll and you want to get some loot boxes, you can try out Infinity R and maybe it'll be something you enjoy. There were a few other games that released this week that I didn't play. The first one is Capuchin. I didn't play it because it's VR only, and I do not. I have an Oculus dev kit, but I haven't used it in probably 15 years. I don't know if it's still functional, and I'd have to find even where it is to set it up and try it out. So that was a VR only game that I did not play. There was another VR only game called Tattoo VR. Again, I don't have a VR set up right now. Maybe in the future I can tinker with it and see if I can get it functional, and if I can, I'll try those games out. Um, well, not those games, but games on the week that are new like that. Tattoo VR does sound really fun, like from a creative perspective of you're the tattoo artist in this VR setup trying to, put the tattoo that the client wants on them. I think it's a really cool concept for a game, but again, I wasn't able to play it. There was also a game release called Chat Battlers, which is a Twitch chat integration. My Twitch channel hasn't really been live in probably 3 years now, so I don't have the means or the will to boot that back up and try to test out, a Twitch chat based game. So that game I didn't play it, but it is available as well. There's also two other games that came out that I didn't play. One is Rensport, which is a racing sim. All of the reviews said that the cars are super pricey, and I'm not really a racing guy anyway, so I just skipped that one. And then there's another one, an MMO tank game called Tank Arena Total Operation that was released this week. Again, just not really my cup of tea. So I didn't delve into that one, but it was released as well. If that's something that sounds interesting to you, you can check it out. So there you have it. That's the week in review. It's a lot of games. I think it was 42 games in all. I played over 35 of them. Took probably, I don't know, upwards of 10 hours between playing games and cutting video and recording audio and all of that. So hopefully you found this to be useful to see what came out this week. I'll be, tinkering with the format, trying different things as I go, since this is the first episode I've done. But I do think it's, the goal of this video and this series is for people to just be able to be informed of everything that's being released on a weekly basis on Steam in the free realm. And so, hopefully out of this video you got one or two games that you can go try yourself. Have a good one.